Shalom, Yahweh Bashim Yashar B'Gatam to the brothers, Yahweh Shamar Latam Bashim Yashar to the sisters. This is the Wednesday night law class. We're streaming right now for the Hudson Valley, all over the Hudson Valley, Rockland County, Westchester County, Putnam County, Dutch County, Orange County. If you are so-called Native American, so-called Black, so-called Hispanic, this is for you. The I.S.U.P.K. started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commanding General YAHANNA, has been sent all over the globe, and right now we've been sent to the Hudson Valley to change the lives of all so-called Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans. So if you are tuning in right now in the Hudson Valley, make sure you take attendance, sign in. I'm posting the link for the attendance sheet right now. And today we're going to be talking about biblical social distancing. I know everyone has been seeing on the news, make sure you social distance. At first it was 3 feet apart, then it was 6 feet apart. You have some Israelites that say one thing, some Israelites that say that something else. But again, if it's not from the I.S.U.P.K. on the Commanding General YAHANNA, it is not the truth. And social distancing, whether it's 3 feet apart, 6 feet apart, a whole mile apart, it is biblical. And that's what we're going to be getting into today. So as you can see, if you're online, you know, the title of our class is posted. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to get into the New Testament, the book of Romans, chapter 15, verse 4. So I'll give you all a few moments online and here in class to get to Romans chapter 15, verse 4. Right. Abadia, when you get it, I need you to read for me. You got it?
Con. There's Romans 15 and 4. I came across it. Got it?
Con. Actually, can you come sit right here for right now?
Con, sir. Romans 15 and 4. Whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope.
So everything that was written aforetime, everything that was written in the what people call the Old Testament or the Apocrypha, all that was written for our learning. Just like Christ when he stepped on the scene and all the disciples, what did they use to learn and what did they use to teach? Anyone know? What did Christ and the disciples use to teach the people? Want to take a guess, sis? No? What's going on, brother? Say again?
Scriptures.
From where?
From the prophets that left from before.
Correct. The Old Testament. Right. That is exactly where Christ went to when he went to quote a scripture, when he went to cut a Pharisee, when he went to edify his people. That's exactly what all the disciples like Peter, Paul, Simon, Matthew, and Luke used. They used the Old Testament to teach their people. All right? So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to go into the Old Testament to teach our people that social distancing is something that we as Israelites, we practice. That's how we maintain our strict code of hygiene. That's how we maintain our strict code of quarantine like they do in hospitals right now for the coronavirus. We practice all these things to make sure that we wouldn't get each other sick, to make sure that we would give our times to heal properly. And it's all right here in the Bible. It's all written aforetime, and it's used right now for our learning. So what I first want to do is I would like for you all to go to Leviticus chapter 11. All right? Everyone should turn to Leviticus chapter 11. I'll give you all a few moments to get there, right?
What verse?
We can start at verse 1. All right? Go ahead, read.
Leviticus 11 and 1. I came across it. Got it? And the Most High spake unto Moses and Aaron, saying unto them.
So the Lord gave Moses strict instructions on what he wanted to tell the rest of the children of Israel. And if you do not know, Moses was very shy and not confident in his speech because he had a speaking impairment. So his brother Aaron was his mouthpiece. All right, keep going.
So speak unto the children of Israel, saying, These are the beasts which ye shall eat among all the beasts that are on the earth.
So as you start to begin to read Leviticus chapter 11, hey brother man, if he's like bored or whatever, you know, we got some toys in the back. Okay, no sweat, most in Christ. We're given strict instructions on the things that we can and cannot eat, right? If we go down to verse 4, can you read verse 4?
4. Nevertheless, these shall ye not eat of them that chew the cud, or of them that divide the hoof.
Now skip to the end of that verse.
He is unclean unto you.
Then when you read, you'll see the descriptions of the different type of land animals that we cannot eat because they don't have a cloven foot, and they don't chew the cud. So in order for you to know what kind of animal that walks on land that you can't eat, they have to have one of two requirements. They have to have a split hoof or cloven foot, and they have to chew a cud. So for example, a deer is cloven footed. Is when you look at pictures of its hooves, you can see how it's split, and deer also chews the cud. So it constantly is chewing down and breaking down its food, whether in its mouth or in its stomach. Cows, perfect example. They have, I think, more than one stomach or two stomachs, right?
I believe it's 3.
3 stomachs. They have more than one stomach where when they chew the cud for a while, the grass, the wheat, the hay, it goes into their mouth. They chew on it, breaks it down, go into one stomach. Then it goes to the second stomach, continues to get broken down. However, an animal like a pig, it does have a cloven foot, but it does not chew the cud. It just eats anything and it just sits in its stomach.
Right.
Now, when we keep going down, we start to see other animals that we can and cannot eat. Right. Like for example, if you want to read verse 9, you see the things that come from the water, fish, anything that has fins and scales. Those are things that you can't eat. If it doesn't have fins and scales, you cannot eat, like lobster, catfish, shark, dolphin, whale, tuna fish. The reason why tuna fish is we teach that tuna fish is unlawful to eat because tuna, there's many varieties of tuna, right? And when you look at tuna close enough, its scales are so small that you can't really see it from the naked eye. So when you look at tuna, it doesn't look like it has scales. We actually had men go to the fish market. I believe there's a fish market right here on 116th, between Lenox and 5th Avenue. You can go and see the tuna. You can have the tuna descaled right there, and you can see that you can't see the scales on it. Therefore, that's something that we would not eat because we could not physically see the scales. All right. Now we get down into more animals that we find out that is unclean, right? And I want you to focus on, yeah?
So we can't eat tuna at all.
I would strongly suggest not to eat tuna because you cannot see its scales. In ancient times, they didn't have microscopes or lenses where they can dissect it and put a piece of the flesh underneath a microscope and change the zoom lens, and we didn't have any of that. So we had no way of telling. All right? So I would say just to be on the safe side, eat some salmon in the can. I like some salmon in the can, you know, some salmon sandwiches, you know what I mean? A little bit of peppers, onions, you know? Perfect, boom. Right? But I want you to focus on the fact that it says unclean, right? Can you read verse 8 for me, Abadia?
8, of their flesh shall ye not eat.
It says of their flesh, all these animals that are considered abominations or unlawful to eat, we are not supposed to eat them. Keep going.
And their carcass shall ye not touch.
So we can't even touch a dead pig.
Right.
We can't even touch a dead horse.
Right.
We're not supposed to touch a dead zebra, a dead tiger, your dog that passes away. We're not even supposed to touch them.
What people don't understand is what's called, that also amounts to minks and furs and other such things that in this captivity that are used in the society is basically used to like be beautiful, like a fox fur, or like if you've seen American Gangster, like that chinchilla he had, that's unlawful. You cannot wear furs. Alligator shoes.
Correct. You cannot wear. Now here's the caveat. You cannot have an unclean animal killed so that way you can use it for whatever.
Right.
However, I think it was John, right? He had a jacket made of camel hair.
Right.
So more than likely, the only way for him to have a jacket or a cloak made of camel hair is if he had to keep the law, which means that the camel was still alive and they just shaved the hair off of it. So that's something that you can do. If you like want to get a fox scarf or whatnot, you can always cut the fur off the fox and have it stay alive. Like they shear wool, how they cut the wool off of a sheep without killing it. That's lawful. But here it's talking about the carcass. So you cannot touch any of these unlawful animals. Keep going.
God, they are unclean unto you.
They're what?
Unclean to you.
So these animals are unclean unto us. So if something's unclean, what's something that can result from an animal that is unclean or touching something that's unclean? Viruses and disease. Exactly. So by you touching an unlawful animal that's dead or eating an unlawful animal, diseases can spread. That's why pigs, you can see they're all pus and some of their meat. You can see different types of worms in the meat, and that people ingest them. You can get sick, gravely sick off of these things, right? Yeah. So one thing I want you to keep in mind, since these are unclean, I want to go over verse 19, right? So Leviticus chapter 11, verse 19. Read that for me when you get the chance. 19.
And the stork, the heron, after her kind, and the lapwing, and the bat.
The what?
The bat.
The what?
The bat.
That means you cannot eat bat, because a bat is unclean unto you. Right. It is an abomination. You cannot touch the carcass of a bat, because it is what? Unclean. Right. You cannot eat a bat, because why? It is unclean. And this is how viruses spread. When people like heathens, or when we are disobedient to the Lord, we want to do things like eat shrimp and eat crab and eat lobster. These unclean things can give us diseases, sicknesses, give us high blood pressure, cholesterol, help alter our cells to give us cancer. These are unclean things that we should not be eating. Yes.
And if I may, scientifically speaking, a lot of these animals are omnivores, carnivores, or they come from a family that can't be carnivores. Like there's fruit bats that are vegetarian, but however, bats as a group are known for being what's called. And then everybody calls them like rats with wings. Are you really going to sit around and eat a rat?
Correct. Now I want you to read verse 24.
24. And for these ye shall be unclean.
So it's listing a bunch of other animals that if you were to eat or touch their dead carcass, you would be considered unclean. Keep going.
Salakia. Whosoever toucheth the carcass of them shall be unclean until the evening.
So if you were to touch, if you were to, let's say your pet cat passed away of old age, your dog passed away of old age, you don't want it to leave it there in the living room or leave it there in its favorite bed that, or on your bed. I know a lot of animals, when they go to die, they may go to like a private place to die, or they might go to a place that is comfortable for them to die, whether it's your bed, the corner of the room where they have their own little doggy bed or whatnot. It's okay to pick them up at that time because you want to remove them. But it does say you are still unclean, right? Read the next verse.
25. And whosoever beareth aught of the carcass of them shall wash his clothes.
Shall what?
Shall wash his clothes.
Shall what?
Wash his clothes.
So if you have to touch a dead animal or unclean dead animal, after you buried it, after you take it out, remove it, you should supposed to wash your clothes. You should also wash yourselves. We're going to get into that. Keep going.
And be unclean until the even.
And you are considered unclean until the sun goes down. Now, let's say the sun's already down and then you're touching the animal. You're still unclean until the next sun comes up and then goes down.
Salaki, this would be talking about someone who has to deal with dead animals on a daily, like a dog catcher, right?
This is talking about touching any dead animal or any unclean dead animal.
Well, Salaki, because it says bear aught of the carcass of them. Aught, if I'm not mistaken, means often in this instance.
It's possible. You can look it up, but I'm telling you right now, if you have to carry out your dead dog, you have to wash your clothes because it's unclean. If you have to remove your cow, which is a lawful animal to eat, and it died in the woods, or a wolves got to it and it died, when you remove it from your property, it's still unclean because it's dead. All right? Now drop that. I want you to go to, yes. I'm sorry, you had a question.
And when you say that you're going to be unclean until Eve, what do you mean by unclean?
Unclean, say when your kids were young, did they ever, when you were, feeding them, did they ever throw up after drinking milk or something like that? And the vomit got on you? Were you clean or unclean? Okay. Same thing here. So when you're touching a dead animal or touching an unlawful dead animal, you think of it that way. You're unclean. You got to shower. You got to jump in the shower, change your shirt because you got vomit on your shirt. You might got some, stuff in your hair. You might have to wash your hair out now. That's what it means, that you're unclean, okay? So what I want you to do is go to, in the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 38, verse 1. So if you have a King James 1611 Bible, you'll have the Ecclesiasticus in it. I believe there's another apocrypha in the library, should be on the top shelf. If the sisters don't have it, you can give it to them. Brother, you got the Ecclesiasticus? Yeah. Okay, on the top shelf. Top shelf.
Yeah, okay, here it is.
And just go to the book of Ecclesiasticus for them.
Okay, concept. Ecclesiasticus.
Chapter 38.
38 and...
We're going to start in chapter 38.
Okay.
There you go, sis.
I have it.
Oh, you got it. Okay,
no,
no, sign Christ. Not Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiasticus.
Yeah.
The Apocrypha is a combination, I believe, 12 books or 11 books. 14 books that were taken out of the official Bible. So you're not going to find it in the Bible unless you get a King James 1611 Bible. All right?
So like, technically it's 12 because 2 of them are just chapters taken out of Esther and Daniel. But that's true.
Brother, you had a question?
The Enoch and the Jasper and the Jubilee.
They're not part of the Bible whatsoever.
Right.
Yeah, we don't teach from them because there's nothing to back them up to verify them because they weren't. I believe they weren't part of the scriptures that were found with the Dead Sea Scrolls, right. And they weren't part of the complete Bible and like the 1611 that was being taught.
The Book of Enoch was written in the 70s by a white man who, even in the foreword when you buy the Book of Enoch today, you read the foreword, the beginning, first few pages that tells you about the book, and he'll tell you straight up, this is not the Book of Enoch. This is what we believe the Book of Enoch is.
Correct. All right, so we're going to start at verse 1, all right? Ecclesiasticus, chapter 38, verse 1.
38 and 1. Con.
Read.
This is Ecclesiastes 38 and 1. Honor a physician with the honor due unto him, for the uses which you may have of him. For the Most High hath created him. So the Most High God created doctors, created nurses, created that particular position, and that is why Levites were always the ones to help diagnose an illness, right, to help come up with a solution to help you get better, right? So during these times, we should honor these physicians, whether they're heathens or whether they're Israelites, because what they're doing, the Lord still created them to be put in positions to help us live better lives, to healthier lives. And part of this is what is being taught and what is being pushed, and what you see on the news is social distancing. Because COVID-19 can be spread through droplets from the mouth, being spit or just lingering in the air, someone coughing and not coughing on their sleeves, or coughing in a tissue, or coughing on their arm, and they're coughing on objects that you touch on a daily basis. So let's say if you have to ride on the subway, right? Someone coughs on their hand, they touch the pole. Now that germ, that whatever COVID-19 virus was on their hand, now on the pole. 3 stops later, he gets off, someone else comes in, they touch that same spot on the same pole. They rub their hand down the pole and hold at a different spot, spreading that virus, right? You're touching something that someone used, touching the outside of a mask constantly and then touching your face. We should be honoring these physicians that are telling us what we can and cannot do in order to help avoid spreading and contracting the COVID-19. Now, don't get me wrong, the Lord is what we should be fearing the most. And right now, I'm just going to be going into why we have physicians that help teach us on how to stay clean and hygienic, because we are a clean and hygienic people. Back in ancient times when we lived amongst ourselves, we wouldn't have to worry about COVID-19 because we practice social distancing based on certain things, and we're going to get into that right now. Let me get Leviticus chapter 15.
Leviticus chapter 15. We're going to start in verse 1.
John.
So we're going to learn about being unclean, different types of ways of being unclean, and where social distancing and quarantining someone actually has its roots right here in the Bible. Read.
Leviticus 15:1. Hakim McCarthy got it? God. And the Most High spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying.
Again, we're learning how Moses and Aaron are communicating to our ancestors on what we need to do. And we're going to find out that it's all about when a person is sick, unclean, unhealthy, has a disease, has a virus. All right, keep going.
2. Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them, when any man hath a running issue out of his flesh, because of his issue, he is unclean.
So what do you think this means?
So my addictions and just.
Say again?
Addictions.
Addiction is not really is not an addiction. Has a running issue out of his flesh. Want to give it a try, sis? Say again? Mucus can help spread disease, but it's not so much talking about that. What it's talking about, an issue is, let's think of it as a disease, something that is oozing out of your body that cannot stop, such as pus from an open wound. That's liquid oozing out of your body uncontrollably. You just bleeding from an open wound, and it's not just regular blood. You see it as different colors and like think of like a pimple doctor, how you pop a zit and all this ooze and stuff comes out of it, but it's a running issue. It just keeps going, right? And it comes out of the person's flesh anywhere on their body. That person is considered to be unclean, right? Keep going.
Sir. Because of his issue, he is unclean. Verse 3. And this shall be his uncleanness in his issue, whether his flesh run with his issue or his flesh be stopped from his issue, it is his uncleanness.
So what this is saying is, let's say, for example, on my arm, I have a wound that's festering, that's disease, and it's just constantly nonstop pouring out bile and oozing and pus, right? Or my flesh is diseased, so it's stopping my wound from healing properly. So it's festering. Understood? And that makes a person unclean. Keep going.
Come. For every bed whereon he lieth that hath the issue is unclean, and everything whereon he sitteth shall be unclean.
So if you have something like this, you're bleeding uncontrollably, plus pus and ooze and biles coming out of your body uncontrollably, your flesh isn't healing the wound because there's something wrong with it. Everything that you touch, everything that you lie on, also becomes unclean. Why do you think that is?
Spreading it around.
Correct, because you're spreading it around. So if everything that you lie on is unclean, when you lie on your bed is contaminated. When you sit on your favorite chair, it is not contaminated. When you're trying to sit down with your beautiful children watching the Disney Channel or Nickelodeon or watching a music video on BET or VH1, whatever it is, watching Black Watch every Monday night at 10 p.m. You're now contaminating your family couch because you have that uncontrollable running of the flesh due to that issue. You're making everything unclean. Keep going.
Come. 5. Whosoever toucheth his bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening.
Now, when you're sick, where do you go when you're sick? To the doctor. Now, when you're on when you go to sit down, when you go to the doctor, right? What do they normally tell you to do? So that way they can check you and everything. What's one of the first things they tell you?
To go to the waiting room.
Waiting room? Say you're in the room with the doctor. What does the doctor tell you to do?
Sit on that chair.
Sit on that chair, but what's on that chair? That paper, right? The reason why is because that paper is used to protect that couch or little observation table or chair that they have from you because they don't know what you are bringing into that facility, onto that chair.
Right.
That's why they always rip it off when you leave and throw it out because they don't want it to be contaminated. So whoever touches that bed, if say you're sick at home and you have this issue and this disease and you're in your bedroom, if your wife comes into the bedroom, she touches the bed, she's also unclean. Because again, you're sick, you're contaminated, you have to be quarantined. That bed is off limits now. That bed has to be quarantined as well. If she comes in and touches the bed, she now has the risk of exposing herself to that disease or to that illness that you're battling. So she becomes unclean. Anyone who touches the bed that you lay on is also unclean. Right? Keep going. Keep reading verse 5.
5, and bathe himself, and be unclean until the even.
Read it from the top.
5, whosoever toucheth his bed shall wash his clothes.
And what you have to do is wash your clothes. So if you were to come in contact with the bed your husband is laying on and he's sick, what you would do after you're done taking care of him, bringing him his soup or his water or whatnot, what you would have to do is remove your clothing, wash your clothing, keep going.
Wash his clothes and bathe himself in water.
And go take a shower. Scrub everything. Put shampoo, conditioner, wash your body, get your nails real good. Everywhere. You have to clean yourself and clean the clothing that came in contact with the disease or came in contact with the virus or the illness. Keep going.
And be unclean until the even.
And you'll have to wait until the sun comes down for you to be clean again. Does that make sense? All right. That is why doctors, they wear scrubs. That's why right now when you look on the news and you're seeing people taking care of patients who are battling COVID-19, right. They have on the regular clothes, but they have on white jumpsuits. Right. They have on blue jumpsuits. They have on a mask and then a visor and then a helmet over them and goggles and gloves because they're protecting themselves. They don't go home and walk around like that. They end up taking all that stuff off and washing themselves, getting rid of those clothing. You say something?
Concept about the last few weeks since this thing really started, that's all you've been hearing, especially Governor Cuomo talking about. We need more PPE. We need more PPE, personal protective equipment, I believe is the abbreviation for that. What's called, meaning like the gloves, the masks, the little scrub suits that they have. Why? Because that's integral to the fight. And
right now, there's so many dead bodies that they're having to put them in trucks, in refrigerated trucks.
Right.
I work on Ward's Island, Randall's Island here in New York City, and they're putting all these dead bodies in trucks, refrigerated trucks, and they're wearing like quarantine ET zippered up yellow suits, hazmat suits to put these bodies in that truck. All right. Can we go on to the next verse?
Concept. Next verse 6. Verse 6. And he that sitteth on anything whereon he sat, that hath the issue, shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the even.
Now, if you sit on something that, if I had the disease or the sickness, and I sat on this chair, if you ended up sitting on this chair, and if you end up sitting on this chair, what you have to do is you have to then go, once you leave, wash your clothes, wash yourselves, and you would be unclean until the sun goes down. All right? So we're learning about social distancing here because you don't want to be around someone who has a disease, because otherwise, if you weren't around them, you wouldn't have to worry about touching their bed and having to wash your clothes and having to clean yourselves. However, some people do have to come in contact with people to make sure that they are healthy, they're battling the disease appropriately. That's why we have physicians, nurses. So they have to come in contact. So the Levites back then would have to come in contact with the sick, people who were dying, people that were battling some type of illness. And these are the laws that they had to follow. And these are the laws that we have to follow. All right? So whatever you sit on that's contaminated, you have to wash your clothes. That's why they tell you when you go home, change your clothes, immediately wash them, go take a shower, because you want to make sure that that disease or that illness, that virus is not lingering on your clothing, is not lingering on you. And again, once you do that, wash yourselves. When the sun comes down, then you will be clean again. Verse 7.
7. And he that toucheth the flesh of him that hath the issue shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening.
Now say you actually have to touch that person's physical body, whether they were dead and you're just having to remove the body, or they're alive and you have to check their pulse or whatnot. What you have to do is, again, wash your clothes, wash yourselves, because you don't want to carry, cross-contaminate. You don't want to cross-contaminate, and then you have that particular disease and issue, and you touch your son, you touch your daughter, you touch your niece, you touch your grandma, you touch and sit on the chair. You go into the school and you're sitting on something, and now it becomes unclean. So we're learning about how social distancing is extremely important, how it's biblical. We're learning about how quarantining someone is biblical. We're learning about how, in order to prevent cross-contamination, in order to prevent the spread of disease and stay clean and healthy, is biblical. It's right here in the book of Leviticus, chapter 15. All right? Let's go to verse 8.
8. And if he that hath the issue spit upon him that is clean, then he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening.
Now, I don't know if any of you have been watching the news. If you have been, what are some of the symptoms or side effects of having this coronavirus or COVID-19 that the Lord is plaguing the earth with? No? You don't watch this? Okay. I don't, to be honest, I don't watch this either. I go on my phone, I check the weather, is it going to rain or not, and then that's it. Abadia?
You want the symptoms?
Tell me some of the symptoms of COVID-19.
Shortness of breath, dizziness, lack of mobility skills, so on and so forth. Basically, it attacks your respiratory system. You'll start to have breathing problems. The thing about it is that's crazy is that what's called.
You're getting too much into it. You end up coughing,
right,
sneezing, because it affects your like Abadi says, your upper respiratory system. So you're gasping for breath.
Right.
There's been reports that people are suffering, gasping for breath, and coughing and sneezing. So what happens when you cough? What happens when you sneeze? You what? You're spreading it by. I have something in my mouth and then I take it out of my mouth. I'm doing what? It's right here in the verse. It's right there in the verse, like the 6th or 7th word. If he that have the issue, you guys see that word? It's right after the word issue.
Spit.
What?
Spit.
Spit. You end up spitting the droplets that are contagious. That's why doctors are walking around with face masks. They're walking around with plastic visors, screen protectors to protect their face, because these patients, they're coughing and they're spitting the virus is in their saliva, is in their upper respiratory system. So if they're coughing, they're spitting. The little droplets that linger in the air or can be flung across the room and land on your face. So if he that have an issue spit upon him, if you're taking care of someone and they have a common cold, if they have a flu, if they're coughing on you and they're spitting on you, or let's say they're vomiting,
right,
that's a way that you can actually get sick.
right.
And here we're learning about if this does happen, if someone does spit, someone's vomiting, they're coughing, they're sneezing, and it gets on you, you have to wash your clothes and wash yourselves, because that's the only way to help prevent and stop the spread of any type of illness. Make sense? Let's go to verse 9.
9. And what saddle soever he rideth upon, that hath the issue, shall be unclean.
Now back then we rode on a lot of different animals. We rode on camels, elephants, maybe giraffes. We rode on donkeys, horses. Right now, and here in New York, our saddle is the whip. You know what I mean? So if you got a car, or if you have a horse, I know some people that own horses in New York. It's not nothing. It's crazy to see, but some people still do. If that person were to sit on it, in that car, in that seat now becomes contaminated.
Right.
If one of your loved ones or your friends is sick and you put them in the car to take them to the hospital where they sat, and now becomes contaminated. In the hospital, when they're putting a patient in, that is contaminated. They have to wipe it down, spray it down, and clean it before they can allow more people to come into it. So whatever you're sitting on, and like in a vehicle, that spot also becomes unclean, and it needs to be cleaned. And whoever has that issue that sits in that spot, that spot now becomes unclean. All right, keep going. Verse 10.
10. And whosoever touches anything that was under him shall be unclean until the even. And he that beareth any of those things shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the even.
So if you touch anything that came into contact with that person, all of it's unclean. You are unclean. You have to wash your clothes, because what happens when you touch something? You end up touching your shirt, end up touching your pants, tying your shoelaces, fixing your hair, putting your mask on, your mask off, putting your sunglasses if you're trying to stunt. All of that becomes unclean. You have to wash those things, disinfect those things, wash yourselves, and you're unclean until the sun goes down. All right? That's verse 10, correct?
Come, sir.
All right. Verse 11.
11. And whomsoever he toucheth that hath the issue, and hath not rinsed his hands in water, he shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the even.
So that, for example, if you end up touching someone and you end up not washing your hands are unclean. So whatever you're touching, you end up making it unclean. So what you should do is go immediately and wash your hands. Now, if you don't do that, your hands are unclean, you're touching yourself, you're touching your clothes and all that. Now you have to go wash your clothes and wash the rest of your body, because you could have contaminated yourself or contaminated other things. All right? Next verse.
12. And the vessel of earth that he toucheth, which hath the issue, shall be broken, and every vessel of wood shall be rinsed in water.
Now, back in ancient times, if a vessel of earth would be like a clay pot, you know what I mean? So if you drank something from that clay pot is now unclean. It was supposed to be broken, shattered, gotten rid of, because it's unclean, it's dirty, right? Any vessel of wood, like a wooden spoon or a wooden cup, it will be clean. Nowadays, I don't know about you, but plastic bowls are very popular and common. They may look like ceramic or feel like ceramic, but a lot of them are plastic bowls.
You're right.
Here you do have people who have ceramic cups or plates. Technically, they should be broken and shattered. So I would suggest not feeding your loved one who's sick with your nice fine china. Right. All right, keep that locked out. Use a plastic bowl, plastic cup. Feed them through that, because you only spend a lot of money every time someone is sick, having to replace your nice china. All right.
Yeah.
Next verse.
13. And when he that hath an issue is cleaned of his issue, then he shall number to himself 7 days for his cleansing, and wash his clothes, and bathe his flesh in running water, and shall be clean.
So when a person finally comes over and fights that disease, they should give themselves 7 days to be officially cleaned of that issue, because you never know, that person can get sick again on the 3rd day.
Right.
That's why there's many reports right now saying people who beat the COVID-19, they're getting sick again.
Right.
And this time worse. So you always want to give yourself even a longer amount of time, more space to fully recover, to see if you really did heal.
Right.
Because let's say you stop showing symptoms, your respiratory system is good, and you're perfectly fine. 4 days later, 5 days later, you're sick again. So this is put in place to help, again, social distancing, quarantining, isolating people, making sure people get the right treatment and the right care, and how to protect yourself from contaminating and spreading any type of disease, illness, or virus. All right? Verse 14.
14. And on the 8th day he shall take to him 2 turtle doves, or 2 young pigeons, and come before the Most High unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and give them unto the priest.
Now, back in ancient days when we were under the old covenant, the first covenant, we had to make sin offerings and sacrifice offerings and peace offerings and to the Most High God. So we would have to bring them to the Levites for them to sacrifice. So that way it was our way of apologizing and asking forgiveness to the Lord. Because of Christ, because the Old Testament was broken, which we can prove that in Jeremiah chapter 31, the 30th, around the 31st, 32nd verse, we no longer have to do that. When Christ came on the scene, he died for all of us willingly, so that way we wouldn't have to sacrifice any other animal. So here in modern times, we don't have to sacrifice 2 turtle doves, a pigeon, the best of our ram. We don't have to do any of those things. All right. But what you should do is still pray to God and ask him to forgive you for whatever it is that you've done. Because when you read verse 15,
and the priest shall offer them, the one for a sin offering.
A what?
The one for a sin offering.
A sin offering. Pay attention to that.
And the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for him.
Read that again.
An atonement for him.
No, back for the
And the priest shall make an atonement for him.
Again.
And the priest shall make an atonement for him.
So one will be for a sin offering, and the priest will do what?
Make an atonement for him before the Most High for his issue.
So what right here, what's happening is saying that the reason why that person got sick is right here in this verse. Why do you think that person got sick? Remember the 2 things I told you to pay attention to. Go ahead, brother.
For his sins?
Yes. This person did something that caused him or her to become sick, to get that disease, to get that virus. Otherwise, there would be no need for a sin offering. And what is the priest doing for that person? Brother?
He's gonna make an atonement.
An atonement. Trying to resolve that issue between him and the Lord. So when we get sick like that, when Black, Hispanic, and Native American people, who they say are suffering the most from the coronavirus, from COVID-19, the reason why my grandmother has COVID-19, the reason why my stepfather has COVID-19 is because they're sinners. They prayed to white Jesus. They were raised in the Catholic Church. My grandmother has white Jesus above the refrigerator, above the stove, in her bedroom on 3 different walls, has a picture of Caesar Borgia in her Bible that's in Spanish, has a picture of Caesar Borgia in the bathroom, has crucifix made of palm leaves, of wood, hanging through the hallway from the shoe closet to the living room. You know, we're all our people, we are all sinning. Because I.S.U.P.K is not special. We suffer when our people suffer. So if our people are sinning and they're getting punished, we're getting punished. It's not a we're separate from you guys. We still suffer these same curses as you are. Because every day we still have to walk in the streets and see crack pipes in the middle of the street. Every day we have to see our brothers getting shot down. So the reason why our people are supposedly the biggest ones getting affected by COVID-19 is because we are sinning. And in ancient times, when one person sinned, we all suffered from that.
Right.
So here, these people are sinning, and that is why the Lord is giving Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans COVID-19. It's not because they magically dust blew and they got COVID-19. No, the Lord put them in a position to get COVID-19. Because my grandmother don't leave the house on the bottom floor. She has her own bathroom, kitchen, and all that stuff. She don't leave the house unless it's to feed the cat that comes to the door every day. She don't leave the house. However, what could have happened is the mailman probably was sick or carrying COVID-19. The mail could have been contaminated. She goes out and gets the mail. She goes out and talks to the postman. Now she has it. My mom, who's a nurse, fighting COVID-19, she could have brought it back to the house by not washing her clothes or taking them off immediately. She could have had it somewhere on her hair and then touched the hair and gave my grandmother a hug, or gave my stepfather a kiss on the cheek, right? So the Lord is always going to find a way to put his wrath onto you. And if you believe that you're stuck in the house for 3 weeks and you're quarantining yourself, if you're a sinner, the Lord is going to find the most unique way for you to get sick. The Lord is going to find some unique way for you to suffer. And let's say it's not even you. Let's say it's someone you love that has COVID-19. Someone that is extremely dear to you is battling upper respiratory disease and there's a shortage on ventilators. That is also a punishment for you. You don't have to directly physically suffer because you're a sinner. It could be my grandmother having to go to the emergency room because she can't breathe. And my mom, my stepfather are worried and pacing back and forth in the ER room because they're sinning. All right? So the point of the story of this little quick thing, let's make sure we all repent from our sins and go forward and do what the Lord wants us to do. All right? Keep going to verse 16.
16. And if any man's seed of calculation go out from him, then he shall wash all his flesh in water, and be unclean until the even.
Keep going.
17. And every garment and every skin whereon is the seed of calculation shall be washed with water, and be unclean until the even.
Keep going.
18. The woman also with whom man shall lie with seed of calculation, they shall both bathe themselves in water and be unclean until the evening.
Since we have children in the room, I'm not going to go into in-depth in this. These three scriptures we're talking about is when men and women become intimate with each other. Everything becomes unclean that you lay on, touch, and touch. So what you should do is wash everything, whether it's the bed sheets, whether, wherever it is that you decide to be intimate with each other and express your love to each other, all that should be clean. Your clothes should be clean. The sheets should be clean. Everything should be clean. You should be clean. Take a shower after you're done, and everything's unclean until the sun goes down. All right? Let's go to verse 19.
19. And if a woman have an issue, and her issue in her flesh be blood, she shall be put apart 7 days, and whosoever touches her shall be unclean until the even.
Now this is specifically for women. Can you guess what this might be?
Menstrual?
Yes. When a woman is going through, when Aunt Flo is visiting, when it's that time of the month, a woman should separate herself 7 days from the rest of her family, because her blood is flowing. That would be her issue. So she is considered unclean. So again, whatever you touch is unclean. Whatever you sit on, it becomes unclean. You should separate yourself for 7 days. All right?
If I may, sir?
What's up?
I just want to say a lot of people who don't know the Bible or just don't know the scriptures try to say like the Bible demeans women with things like this because we want to separate them. No, we want to separate our nation from COVID-19. And having our women just around bleeding everywhere is not going to do that. So maybe we should have a process to make sure that we don't have a deadly virus walking around because it's just is bleeding.
Because another way viruses spread is also through fluids.
Right.
Through blood.
Right.
That's why AIDS and HIV, which is a sexually transmitted disease, a blood-carrying virus, affects the blood.
Right.
If a woman who's on her cycle is bleeding all over the place, it's dripping everywhere. It's kind of dirty. It's unclean, right. Unsanitary.
Right.
So this is one of the reasons why we should separate ourselves. Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's not. Nobody wants to go over the place.
Exactly right.
You won't even know if she don't tell you.
Right.
True. Right.
And if I may, just one last thing, going back to calculation for men. If you look up, Zika virus stayed inside a man's copulation longer than anywhere else.
Talking about the Zika virus?
The Zika virus, yeah.
Okay. That was affecting Central South America, right?
Cancer, yeah.
All right. So all these things are to make sure that we can quarantine ourselves, that we don't spread diseases and illnesses. All right. Verse 20.
Okay,
yes.
What's the Zika virus?
The Zika virus. Let's look it up. I'll get it right now for you.
Kind of came from mosquitoes or something like that. I know it started there. Yeah, kind of. Shalaki, this goes into that scripture where it says the Most High.
So a Zika virus, according to the CDC, right?
Cancer.
Come on. The Zika virus, according to the CDC, was a virus that is spread mostly by the bite of an infected mosquito, right? It can be passed from pregnant women to a fetus. The infection can cause birth defects. Come on. It can be spread through sex, through blood transfusion, and it was a disease that caused fever, rash, headache, joint pain, red eyes, muscle pains. They can last for several days to weeks. It says that people usually don't get sick enough to go to the hospital, and they very rarely die of Zika. But once a person has been infected with Zika, they are likely to be protected from future infections. So once you have it, you won't get it again. And babies who were born with Zika virus came out with like enlarged heads.
I remember that.
Yeah. All right.
Elijah, if I may.
What's
So
up?
that last point, that's the opposite of Corona. Because from what, as you just said, people are leaving the hospital uncured and then coming right back. Yeah, I got it.
Correct.
Somehow.
Like I work at a homeless shelter, right?
Right.
And we have some men who have been quarantined and have to go to like a Department of Homeless Services location and stay there for days. We have people who actually get cleared by doctors and can come back into the shelter. We have people who leave on their own, and when they try to come back, we don't allow them in because there's no discharge paperwork. There's nothing clearing them to say that they are allowed to come back or they have overcome the COVID-19. So they get sent directly back. All right. So this is extremely important why quarantining, social distancing, isolating people is extremely important, and why it's in our written records to help prevent the spread, fight against disease, and to slow the spread of viruses. All right. Verse 20.
20, and everything that she lieth upon in her separation shall be unclean. Everything also that she sitteth upon shall be unclean.
Now, I don't know about you guys, but I don't have, some big mansion where I can put, one of my women in like a other side of the house and I don't see her for 7 days. We live like common folk. We probably got a 2-bedroom apartment where our kids share a bunk bed or something, and we sleep in one room. You know what I mean? So whatever our wife or wives, if you have more than one wife, lays on, that becomes unclean. So what you can do, what I could suggest is one, listen, brother, if you want to be like, hey baby, you can just sleep on the bed, I'll just sleep on the floor, or I'll just sleep on the couch, or like, listen, honey, I gotta go to work today. I gotta go to work tomorrow. It's a long day. Can you please sleep on the floor and I'll sleep on the bed? I need to get my rest. You know what I mean? Or what you can do is the woman should wrap herself in something so that way she's not touching the bed and she's not physically touching you. Make sense?
So like if I may,
What's up?
you could use a towel, like to cover her.
Yeah, to cover herself.
Yeah,
she's not touching the bed and she's not touching you.
Or separate sheets.
If you're on the same bed, like what about the bed, the top sheet that goes onto the mattress?
Well, when I used to work I used to work housekeeping, the people used to come over and I had to make one side of the bed with one sheet and another half of the bed with another sheet. It was difficult, but I made it work.
So how would you get both sheets to stay onto the mattress?
What I did was I'll curve it like in the middle, like the look like this. I'll curve fold like this, and then I'll just tighten it on each side.
Ah, okay. Makes sense. All right. You're being creative. Israel is geniuses,
Right.
So, and also whatever she would sit on becomes unclean as well. So if she's sitting on the family couch, that part of the couch becomes unclean. So put a towel underneath it. Put a towel on the chair. That way she's not contaminating or spreading spreading her illness, her issue to the couch, because then that's a difficult stain to get off. You know what I mean? So, verse 21.
21. And whosoever toucheth her bed shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the even.
And whoever ends up touching the bed where the woman was laying on, same thing for the men if he has an issue, or any other person that has an issue. Wash your clothes, wash yourselves, and you're unclean until the evening. All right? Next verse.
22. And whosoever toucheth anything that she sat upon shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the evening.
And again, if you end up touching something that she sat on, whether you're touching the towel that she sat on, touching the chair she sat on, the couch, whatever it is, you gotta wash your clothes, wash your hands, take a shower, because you're unclean. You might have that illness, that disease. You might be contaminating other things. So make sure you clean yourself as soon as you can. Next verse.
23. And if it be on her bed, or on anything whereon she sitteth, when he toucheth it, he shall be unclean until the even.
Now, if the illness be on anything, whether it's the bed, the chair, if you end up touching it, you gotta clean yourself. Now, there's a lot of redundancies here because it's that important. When you have to repeat yourself about something, like tell your kids not to play with the stove, not to play with the stove, not to play with the stove, it's because it's extremely important. They could burn themselves. They can burn down the house. So this is the Lord wants you to know. This is extremely important. Make sure you wash yourself. Make sure you clean your clothes. All right? Keep going.
24. And if any man lie with her at all, and her flowers be upon him, he shall be unclean 7 days, and all the bed whereon he lieth shall be unclean.
Now, if you end up laying in the same bed as her, and she's bleeding, and it gets on you, you are now also unclean for 7 days.
So I thought that was my answer.
No, you also are unclean for 7 days. All right. So if you end up, she comes scooting over trying to spoon you or whatever it is, or you end up spooning her, and the blood gets on the bed and you are touching it, or the blood gets on you, you are unclean for 7 days. All right.
So
No. Please read the next verse.
What verse is that?
25.
25. And if a woman have an issue of her blood many days out of the time of her separation, or if it run beyond the time of her separation, all the days of the issue of her uncleanness shall be as the days of her separation. She shall be unclean.
Now let's say it's longer than 7 days. Let's say it's a irregular monthly. It lasts 8 days or 9 days or 12 days. She's unclean. She's unclean until it stops. All right. So let's say it goes on for 14 days. She's unclean for those 14 days. All right. Next verse.
Count 26. Every bed whereon she lieth all the days of her issue shall be unto her as the bed of her separation. And whatsoever she sitteth upon shall be unclean as the uncleanness of her separation.
So as long as she's bleeding and sick for, whether it's 7 days, 15 days, 30 days, or 3 days, everything she touches, everything that she comes in contact with is unclean. All right? Next verse.
Cancer. And whosoever toucheth those things shall be unclean, and shall wash his clothes and bathe himself in water, and be unclean until the even.
So everything, again, and everything she touches, you're unclean if you touch the same thing. It has to be washed, disinfected, spray down the chair, get some Lysol, wash yourself, get some, some Tide, some Gain, some extra, make it soft, get some Downy. Is the Snuggle Bear Downy, or is that something else? Snuggles, make it, clean your clothes, make it feel nice. All right. Next verse, Baba Kishon.
28. But if she be cleansed of her issue, then she shall number to herself 7 days, and after that she shall be clean.
Now, if her period stops, she should wait 7 days again to make sure that she's unclean. To make sure she doesn't end up bleeding again or she's not sick again. All right. Because let's say some people, women may stop bleeding on the 4th day, on the 3rd day. You still wait that 7 days. All right. Next verse, Baba Kishon.
Count 29. And on the 8th day she shall take unto her 2 turtles or 2 young pigeons, and bring them unto the priest to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall offer the one for a sin offering, and the other for a burnt offering. And the priest shall make an atonement for her before the Most High for the issue of her uncleanness.
Now, if she's bleeding for 15 days, 8 days, 30 days, there's a reason why. That's why they're making a sin offering. That's why the priests are making an atonement for her, because she did something to cause the Lord to punish her by having her bleed for 15 days, 20 days. Understood? All right, let's go to verse 31, Baba Kishon. Verse 31.
Verse 31. Thus shall ye separate the children of Israel from their uncleanness, that they die not in their uncleanness, when they defile my tabernacle that is among them.
So right here is telling you, this is what happens. Well, this is what we have to do: separate the children of Israel from each other when they're unclean. This is why we practice social distancing right now in modern day, because if we're sick and we're spreading a disease, the way it spreads is if we're close together. If someone is sick and multiple people are sick, if they're gathered like sardines on the number 6 train right now, they're spreading that. The likelihood of them spreading that disease will will increase because they're in close proximity to people who are not contaminated. So social distancing, isolating a sick person, quarantining a sick person, so until they get better, is biblical. Is right here in Leviticus chapter 15. All right. Next verse, please.
Count 31. Well, it's accurate.
You gotta pay attention now.
So 32. This is the law of him that hath an issue, and of him whose seed goeth from him and is defiled therewith, and of her that is sick.
No, just read 32 again, Bubba Shah.
This is the law of him that hath an issue, and of him whose seed goeth from him and is defiled therewith.
So this is telling that these are laws for that men and women who end up having some type of issue, end up having some type of disease, sickness, and virus, or a man who ends up being intimate with a woman. This is the law that they're supposed to follow. They're supposed to separate themselves. They're unclean for a certain amount of time. They need to wash their clothes and wash themselves, and they're unclean until the sun goes down. Next verse.
Count 33. And of her that is sick of her flowers, and of him that hath an issue of the men, and of the woman, and of him that lieth with her, which is unclean.
Now, this one is talking about, this is also the law for women who are on their monthly, for him that have an issue of the man and the woman, and when they end up lying together. So if you have a regular woman who's just going through a monthly, or a woman who is having her monthly for longer than the 7 days, for men and women when they're intimate with each other, this is the law of them, because they are unclean and they need to be clean. So any questions on that? No? All right, can we go to the Numbers chapter 19, verse 11? Numbers chapter 19, verse 11. I'll give you all a few moments to get there, all right?
God.
All right, read it when you got it, Baba Shah.
Numbers 19 and 11. He that toucheth the dead body of any man shall be unclean 7 days.
So here, we're also learning about when a person is deceased, right? Because you can still get sick from a dead person.
Right.
You can still get a virus or illness or disease from a dead person. That's why when a person dies and they're contaminated with some pathogen or contagion, like right now, COVID-19, they're putting the dead bodies in big body bags. They're having to put on hazmat suits to deal with the bodies and transport the bodies, right? So if you end up coming in contact with a dead body, it says that you end up being unclean for 7 days. Excuse me. So because the point, you might get sick. There's something that person died from that could be placed and catch on to you and latch on to you and to get you sick. And you might end up spreading it to other people. So you're unclean for 7 days, so you should practice social distancing. You should quarantine yourself so that way you're not increasing the risk of contaminating or getting someone that you love sick. Verse 12, Baba Shah.
12, verse 12. He shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be clean. But if he purify not himself the 3rd day, then the 7th day he shall not be clean.
Listen, make sure you're washing on a daily basis.
Right.
Like use soap, use water, wash your hair, wash underneath your arms, wash your private areas, clean your behind. All right. What this is saying is that he shall purify himself with it on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day he shall be clean. So As long as he bathed, as long as the person cleaned themselves by the third day, then they will be officially clean on the seventh day. But listen, you shouldn't go 2 days without showering. You shouldn't wait till the third day to take a shower. Take a shower every day. Twice, 3 times if need be, you know what I mean? Especially if you're going to come in contact with a dead body, especially if you're working in the hospital with sick people, especially if you're traveling using mass transit, take a shower every day, all right? Take 2 showers every day if you need to be. 3 showers every day. You know, someone sneezes and you're on the opposite end of the room, go take a shower. Just go take a shower, all right? But if he did not purify himself on the third day, if he does not take a shower on the first day, the second day, and doesn't take a shower on the third day, then on the seventh day he's unclean. He shall not be clean. All right? Any questions on that? Yeah, brother?
So then you gotta wait for another 7 days?
Yes, technically he would have to wait because he's unclean right now. Verse 13, Bubba Chuck?
Count 17.
No,
13.
that's the next verse.
God, whosoever toucheth the dead body of any man that is dead and purifieth not himself, defileth the tabernacle of the Most High, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel, because the water of separation was not sprinkled upon him. He shall be unclean. His uncleanness is yet upon him.
So listen, if you are touching dead bodies, like say doctors have to touch a dead body, nurses have to touch a dead body, morticians have to touch a dead body, people transporting the dead body from the hospital to the morgue or vice versa, right? If they don't purify themselves, if they don't take if they don't clean themselves by the third day, which makes them clean on the seventh day, if they're not sprinkled, right? It says that their soul shall be cut off from Israel because they defile the tabernacle of the Lord. Because if you're touching a dead body and you don't shower and you come into this school the next day, you're defiling the temple of the Lord.
Right.
You're disrespecting the Lord, and you're putting everyone that's in here at risk of catching a disease or an illness. But most importantly, you're sinning.
Right.
You're making everyone be a part of your sin.
Right.
All right?
What's it?
And that you will be unclean. Okay? And your soul will be cast out from Israel.
Salakia.
Yeah, better.
Go on.
Verse 14, I'll read it. This is the law when a man dieth in a tent. All that come into the tent and all that is in the tent shall be unclean 7 days. So if you end up, so if your loved one ends up dying in the house from COVID-19, the entire house is unclean. That room is unclean. When we go into a funeral home to pay your respects to your auntie or your abuela or Uncle Joe, you're entering a place that is unclean because there's a dead body in there. That dead body can spread diseases. You touching it, going up to the dead body, kissing it, crying over it, praying over it, you're putting yourself at greater risk of getting a disease. Let's say that person didn't die of disease, just old age. That's a dead body that's still slowly decomposing. Whether it's embalmed or not embalmed, you're putting yourself at risk of being unclean. And in fact, when you do, you are unclean for 7 days. And what happens when you're unclean? What do you have to do? You gotta wash, exactly. Go. It's okay. It says wash your clothes, wash yourself, and you're unclean for 7 days. So on the 7th day, when the sun goes down, then you are clean again. Then you can come into the temple. Then you can be around the rest of your family members. Understood? Verse 15. And every open vessel which hath no covering bound upon it is unclean. What do you think that means? Brother?
That's like open vessels. Cuts, wounds.
No, it's a vessel.
Anything.
For example, a cookie jar, do you leave it open or do you cover it?
Yeah, you can cover it.
Yeah, you cover it, right? So any vessel that doesn't have a covering on top of it, becomes unclean, because since there was nothing protecting it, that means anything could have got on there. I could have sneezed, and one of my little droplets from my sneeze could have gotten into your cup of water, could have gotten into your pot of soup. Any vessel that is uncovered becomes unclean. All right? So just make sure you're covering your stuff. Verse 16. And whosoever toucheth one that is slain with a sword in the open fields, or a dead body, or a bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. So, in ancient times, we use swords and spears and arrows. Now, people get hit by buses. They fall off the building. They fall off buildings. What's common right now is that we're all shooting each other, right? So, you would touch someone who was killed. If you were to touch a dead body, if you were to touch a bone of a dead body, or if you went into a graveyard, you would be unclean for 7 days. So let's say you didn't go into the funeral home, but let's say you went to the graveyard where they actually buried your grandmother. They actually buried your friend. Because you're standing on the graveyard and there's nothing but dead bodies around you, you're now unclean for 7 days. Because you went into that graveyard where there's nothing but dead bodies. All right? And what should you do? Wash, exactly. All right, let's go to Leviticus chapter 12, all right? Leviticus chapter 12. I'll give you all a few moments to get there, okay? All right. Leviticus 12:1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, verse 2, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, if a woman have conceived seed, and born a man child, then she shall be unclean 7 days. According to the days of the separation for her infirmity shall she be unclean. What do you think this is? What do you think this is talking about?
Is that when she give birth to a boy, she unclean for 7 days? Correct.
According to the days of her separation. So let's say when she got her monthly, she'll be unclean for 7 days. All right. Verse 3. And in the 8th day, the flesh of his foreskin shall be circumcised. So every male Israel on the 8th day, when they're born on the 8th day, they should all be circumcised. All right. Verse 4. And she shall then continue in the blood of her purifying 3 and 30 days. She shall touch no hollow thing, nor come into the sanctuary until the days of her purifying be fulfilled. So what do you think this means?
Won't be able
to
be able to come into basically here to learn because I'm unclean.
Correct. Brother, you gonna say something else?
I was gonna say that's 33 days, right?
Yes, that is 33 days. Yes.
Alright, let's go off topic though. How many days in the month?
How many days in a month? It all depends on the moon.
On the moon.
Correct. So right now, the calendar that we use, I'm not thinking, I can't recall biblically, but right now, just a regular calendar, there's different types of let's say February has 28 days. March has, I think, 31 days. So if I'm not mistaken, it's all based on the full moon, when there's a full moon. So it changes every month, every season, right? So she's unclean for 33 days. She cannot come into the church. She can't touch anything that's sacred, anything that's hot, that's considered to be holy. All right? That was verse 4. Verse 5. But If she bear a maid child, then she shall be unclean 2 weeks, as in her separation, and she shall continue in the blood of her purifying 66 days. What do you think this means?
Female child.
Yeah. So if she has a female child, what?
She's unclean for 2 weeks.
Yes.
And she, hold on, 3 scores is meaning what?
Well, a score is 20 days. So if it's 3 scores.
And 6 days. So it's 26 days?
Well, 1 score is 20 days.
Oh, sorry.
So 3 score.
It's 60. So it'll be 66 days.
Yes. So if she does give birth to a female, to a baby girl, she's unclean as her separation for 2 weeks, and then she has to wait until 66 days pass.
Why?
Just a law.
What's the difference?
I have to get a better understanding on why there's a difference. I don't want to. I have an idea, but I don't want to say something that I'm not absolutely sure about. All right. But if it's a maid child, she's unclean for 66 days. Verse 6. And when the days of her purifying are fulfilled, for a son or for a daughter, she shall bring a lamb of the first year for a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering onto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, onto the priest. So when the days of purifying and separation is over, she would bring a burnt offering, some type of offering to give to the priest to make to the Lord. All right. Verse 7. Who shall offer it before the Lord and make an atonement for her, and she shall be cleansed from the issue of her blood. This is the law for her that have borne a male or a female. So when this is done, the Lord is making an atonement for her sins, and then she shall be officially clean due to her childbirth. All right. Is that a question, brother? No. Okay. Verse 8. And if she be not, does it have to do on verse 8?
What are we?
Leviticus 12:8. And if she be not able to bring a lamb, then she shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, the one for the burnt offering and the one for a sin offering, and the priest shall make an atonement for her, and she shall be clean. All right. So these are just about almost all the laws of being unclean and how we practice social distancing, how we practice quarantining ourselves or isolating ourselves from one another. All right. So right now I'm going to end the class live. So for everyone that is watching online, Shalom, Yahweh Hashem Yeshai B'Gatam to the brothers, Yahweh Hashem Alatam B'Hashem Yeshai to the sisters. Thank you for tuning in, and make sure not to sign out for your attendance. I'm putting the attendance sheet to sign out right now. All right. So everyone watching online, Shalom.